Morning, everybody. My name's Eric, and I'm happy to be part of your worshiping community today. And I'm going to invite everybody, if you're at home, to, as we begin to worship, just to assume a posture that is worshipful for you as we open up ourselves to God this morning. Please speak. Please speak. Your servant is listening. Please speak. Your servant is listening. Please speak. Your servant is listening. Your servant is listening. Oh, Hosanna. Please speak. Please speak. Your servant is listening. Please speak. Your servant is listening. Please speak. Your servant is listening. Your servant is listening. Oh, Hosanna.
A reading from the book of Jeremiah. The word of the Lord came to me, saying, Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. Before you were born, I set you apart. I appointed you as a prophet to the nations. Alas, sovereign Lord, I said, I do not know how to speak. I am too young. But the Lord said to me, Do not say I am too young. You must go to everyone I send you to and say whatever I command you. Do not be afraid of them, for I am with you and I will rescue you, declares the Lord. Then the Lord reached out his hand and touched my mouth and said to me, I put my words in your mouth. See, today I appoint you over nations and kingdoms to uproot and tear down, to destroy and overthrow, to build and to plant.
Amen. Let's stand together. Hope is built on nothing less than Jesus' blood and righteousness. I dare not trust the sweetest frame, but wholly lean on Jesus' name. On Christ the solid rock I stand, all other ground is sinking sand. All other ground is sinking sand.
When darkness veils his lovely face, I rest on his unchanging grace. In every high and stormy gale, my anchor holds within the veil.
On Christ the solid rock I stand, all other ground is sinking sand. All other ground is sinking sand.
A reading from the book of Psalms. In you, Lord, I have taken refuge. Let me never be put to shame. In your righteousness, rescue me and deliver me. Turn your ear to me and save me. Be my rock of refuge, to which I can always go. Give the command to save me, for you are my rock and my fortress. Deliver me, my God, from the hand of the wicked, from the grasp of those who are evil and cruel. For you have been my hope, sovereign Lord, my confidence since my youth. From birth I have brought me forth from my mother's womb. I will ever praise you.
His oath. His oath is covenant, his blood support me in the whelming flood. When all around my soul gives way, on Christ the solid rock I stand. All other ground is sinking sand. All other ground is sinking sand. When he shall come with trumpet sound. When he shall come with trumpet sound. Oh, may I then in him be found, dressed in his righteousness alone, faultless to stand before the throne. On Christ the solid rock I stand, all other ground is sinking sand. All other ground is sinking sand. Let's sing it one more time. On Christ the solid rock. On Christ the solid rock I stand, all other ground is sinking sand. All other ground is sinking sand. Amen. Why don't you guys go ahead and have a seat? I'm going to take a moment to confess the areas and the times and the spaces in our life where maybe we have been less than what we could be. So let's read these words together. Most merciful God, we confess that we have sinned against you in thought, word, and deed, by what we have done and by what we have left undone. We have not loved you with our whole heart. We have not loved our neighbors as ourselves. We are truly sorry and we humbly repent. For the sake of your Son, Jesus Christ, have mercy on us and forgive us, that we may delight in your will and walk in your ways to the glory of your name. Amen. And now, people of God, receive the assurance of forgiveness from the words of St. Paul. Who shall separate us from the love of Christ? Shall trouble or hardship or persecution or famine or nakedness or danger or sword? No. In all these things we are more than conquerors through him who loved us. For I am convinced that neither death nor life, neither angels nor demons, neither the present nor the future, nor any powers, neither height nor depth, nor anything else in all creation will be able to separate us from the love of God that is in Christ Jesus our Lord.
Let's stand and sing this together. Before I spoke a word, you were singing over You have been so, so good to me. Before I took a breath, you breathed your life in me. Yes, you did. And you have been so, so kind to me. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. Oh, it chases me down, fights till I'm found, leaves the 99. And I couldn't earn it, and I don't deserve it. Still, you give yourself away. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. When I was your foe, still your love fought for me. And you have been so, so good to me. When I felt no worth, you paid it all for me. And you have been so, so kind to me. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. Oh, it chases me down, fights till I'm found, leaves the 99. And I couldn't earn it, and I don't deserve it. Still, you give yourself away. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. It seems to us that things would be much easier if you would just do what we ask, Jesus. If you were more compliant and cooperative, more flexible and adaptable, more open to follow agendas other than your own. But frustratingly, you refuse to be tamed, Jesus. And you won't be domesticated into leaving our brokenness untouched, undisturbed, unruffled. No, you prod and provoke, unafraid of the pain it might cause us or the comfort we may have to relinquish. You are a wild God, Jesus, and we are afraid of such a God. But we choose to praise you anyway, because a domesticated deity, a tame grace, is not what we need. You are a wild God, and we praise you that you are, because any other God would be unworthy of the name. There's no shadow you won't light up, mountain you won't climb up, coming after me. There's no wall you won't kick down, lie you won't tear down, coming after me. There's no shadow you won't light up, mountain you won't climb up, coming after me. No lie you won't kick down, lie you won't tear down, coming after me. No shadow you won't light up, mountain you won't climb up, coming after me. There's no wall you won't kick down, lie you won't tear down, coming after me. Overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. Oh, it chases chases me down, fights till I'm found, leaves the 99, and I couldn't earn it, and I don't deserve it. Still you give yourself away. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God.
You may be seated. Now is the time when we can respond to God, who's been generous to us, by showing our generosity and giving financially. So if you call the Practice Church your home, or if you feel prompted to give, there are high-tech and low-tech ways you can do that this morning. There's the website, which is practicetribe.com/give, where you can set up a recurring or one-time gift. Or you can also, there's a box in the back of the room now, if you prefer to give a physical gift. You can either do that during the passing of the peace or perhaps after the service. But we remember that giving isn't just an obligation here, but it's a spiritual practice. So to that end, would you join me in this prayer of generosity? Giver of all good gifts, you have taught us that godliness without contentment is great gain. We give nothing into this world, and we take nothing out of it. May we who call Jesus Lord devote ourselves to resisting greed, which plunges the human heart into ruin and pierces it with many griefs. Give us the grace to practice generosity with free hearts, fixing our hope on you and not the uncertainty of wealth. May we be rich in good deeds and willing to share all that we have, laying up for ourselves treasure that will not decay, but will shine in the age to come. Amen. And now's the time when we get to pass the peace of Christ to one another. So the peace of Christ be with you.
Well, the peace of Christ be with you. Well, friends, this is the time in the Practice Church where we dismiss our kids. So, mine are already gone. They were over there just a second ago. Poof, they're gone. So if any kids in the room, feel free to follow Kirsten out and have a great time in Kids Church this morning. If this is your first time here at the Practice Church, we are so excited that you are here. The Practice Church is a community that is practicing the way of Jesus together for the sake of the world. And this year, we are beginning the year focusing on the 5 values of the Practice Church. We have said that we want to practice the way of Jesus, and undergirding that practicing the way of Jesus are 5 pillars. They're presence, formation, community, hospitality, and we do it all for the sake of the world. Last week, we spent some time looking at the value of presence. This week, we will be talking about the presence of formation. And as we began to look at this series, we thought that the perfect person to invite to come and be with us for this part of our series is our good friend, Mark Scandrette. So Mark is someone who we lovingly refer to here at the Practice Church as the Godfather, because his book, Practicing the Way of Jesus, was deeply influential in our community and in the formation of our community. In fact, if you have been around the practice long enough, if you were with us at the very beginning, Aaron Nyquist and the team, as they were forming this, they actually sent out Mark's book, Practicing the Way of Jesus, and said, hey, if you're interested in what we're doing, check out this book, because so much of what we do is based on that. Since then, he's come back a number of times. He led us, I think 5 years ago it was, we walked through the entire Beatitudes over the course of 9 weeks. And so he has a wonderful book based on the Ninefold Path, and that's based on the Beatitudes. It's beautiful, wonderful, and I think really appropriate in a season like this in our culture to spend time in those Beatitudes. So anyway, I could just keep talking about how great Mark is, but why don't I just stop talking and allow you to hear how great he is? Would you please join me in welcoming Mark Scandrette?
Hey. Hey, good morning. I finally made the connection with the Godfather moniker and the fact that I'm in Chicagoland, like mob country, and now it's making sense. I'm really honored to be here with you today, and grateful for the connection that I get to have with the practice community. And Jason and I have known each other now for quite a long time, and I'm grateful to have a chance to journey with your community. A little bit more about me. I live in San Francisco, California with my wife, Lisa, and we've got 3 young adult kids. I'm originally from the Midwest. My grandparents are buried about 30 minutes south of here in a cemetery in Wheaton, and my dad grew up in this area. But I've lived in San Francisco for 24 years or so. And I direct an organization that I actually co-founded with an old mentor of Eric's called Reimagine. And we're passionate about helping people apply the teachings of Christ to the messy details of everyday life. And I'll tell you today a little bit more of the story of how I came onto the work that I do. But I'll just say I basically get a chance to, through workshops, labs, and retreats, walk with people all over the world in being formed in the ways of Christ. Right now, I've got 2 labs going on, one with about 60 people and another one with about 25 people. Last year, we had people from 20 different countries in the labs that we do. And so I love the work that we get to do, and I'm really passionate about spiritual formation, which is what I get to talk about this morning. So a little bit more of my story on this. When I was in my mid-20s, I wanted to take some risks to follow Jesus in some new ways, and I longed for deeper kinds of faith community to be a part of. And we moved to San Francisco to start a new community. Other people that we knew had joined us, and we were feeling the pain of some gaps between what we were experiencing and what we thought was the promise of the gospel. And we, as a group of people, started to ask, are we experiencing the kind of transformation in our lives that seems to be the expected outcome of Jesus' life and message? And my first answer to that question is I could look out on Christian faith in America and go, oh, look at the problems, look at the lack of transformation, leaders who make compromises, and the poor reputation that often Christians have in culture about being judgmental and not living up to the love that Jesus demonstrated and things like that. That's easy to do, but if I was really honest, I was not experiencing the kind of transformation promised by the gospel. And I could see gaps in my own life, not always being the kind of patient and caring partner or parent that I wanted to be, not having good skills for dealing with the stress of life, walking by a homeless person and having no skill to know what to do. I knew I should become a more loving and embracing person, but I felt paralyzed. And so the answer was, yeah, there are some gaps. So then our group of friends started asking the question, if we're not experiencing the kind of transformation promised by the gospel, why is that? And for two responses to that question. One was, I don't know that we had the expectation of transformation. I came up in a faith tradition that sort of suggested that the whole goal of Christian faith is to make sure that you go to the good place instead of the bad place when you die. And you do, and if you believe the right things and participate in church, then you're good, you're golden on that. But Jesus' message was not just about the future, it was about all of life. And he talked incessantly about the kingdom of God, the fact that God is here, God is caring, and God is remaking all of creation, and we get to be a part of that. It's a message for the here and now as much as it is for the future. And so that was part of it, and it was so exciting to wake up to that message and begin to sense, wow, there's things to reach out for, there's things to long for and experience now. You don't have to wait until you die to experience life in the kingdom of God. But then I also had to think about the methods that I'd been taught about how discipleship or spiritual formation work. And 3 things characterized my experience of discipleship. And I don't think I'm alone in this. I think these are the 3 dominant ideas that tend to drive how formation or discipleship is seen, particularly in Western Christianity. One is that my understanding of formation or discipleship tended to be about getting the right ideas about God. I would call it information-driven. And if I just read the Bible enough, if I just listen to enough sermons, if I nerd out on theology, get it all figured out in my head, suddenly I will magically be transformed into the likeness of Christ. And there's some problems with that. Like, we live in a time when information is not scarce. And a lot of the way we gather as the church was formed at a time when most people were illiterate and a Bible cost about $10,000. We don't live in that time anymore. I have access to more good information on my phone now than the best libraries in the world had 15 years ago. So information isn't scarce, and information by itself does not transform us. But I notice this tendency, maybe you can relate, where if I want to grow in something, I'll read about it, right? So a few years ago, I was like thinking about wanting more personal productivity, and so I read a book on personal productivity. And then I read 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 other books on personal productivity. And while I was reading them, there was all these great ideas in there. Maybe only check your email once a day and make a list of the most important things you want to do and do those things first. And, take breaks every 52 minutes and awesome stuff. Did I actually do any of those things? No, but while I was reading, it made me feel productive, right? Maybe you can identify with that. I was talking to somebody the other day who was who's challenged with caring for their body. And they said, I know exactly what I need to do to live a more healthy life. So the information is not the problem. All right, so a second thing that I think has been a tendency is for our understanding of formation to be individualistic. Like we live in an individualistic culture, and so we tend to think, I can do this on my own. Like if I have the information, if I know about good spiritual formation practices, I'll just try and do it by myself. And from my experience, most of us do not have the cojones or the ovarios to actually take life-giving steps on our own. And what ends up happening, even in well-meaning settings, is that if we're given instructions about good practices, but we aren't supported to do them, we end up walking around with a big pile of shoulds on our shoulders. I should try that prayer practice. I should learn to love my neighbor better. I should do a gratitude list, right? That fails to acknowledge the way we're designed as human beings to be culture making together, that we really need each other's support to take on good life practice. And third, I think our approaches to discipleship, the ones I've been exposed to, tended to be disengaged, or I would say at times dishonest, about the real issues and struggles of life. And I noticed this tendency in myself. I felt it a little bit this morning even when I was about to come here. I thought about, what do I look like? How do I smell? I want to kind of I zhuzhed my hair a little bit, can you tell? And I want to present well. I want to show you the best parts of me. But the parts of me that need the most transformation are the parts that I'm not going to advertise to you, right? Those places of insecurity and struggle and a sense of failure and wounds and trauma that I've experienced. And so if I don't have the courage to bring that to you and to let it be in the light, then it's not likely that I'm going to experience the kind of healing and wholeness that I really long for. So if that's some of the typical themes of how we've tended to see formation or discipleship, in contrast, how did Jesus make disciples? So first, he didn't just give information. He taught by example, and he had invited his disciples into adventures. And his main goal wasn't just to get them to think correctly, but to challenge where their heart or their will was. And so people would come to him and they'd say, hey, I want to follow you. I want to know your way. I want to be fully alive. And he'd say, great, sell your possessions and give to the poor. Or, hey, I want to follow you. Okay, awesome. We're going to go to this village and I want you to cast out demons, proclaim the kingdom, that the kingdom of God is at hand, and care for the poor. So it wasn't, the learning happened on the go. And Jesus was he was a first century rabbi. So sometimes it's hard for us to grasp this now, but in his context, if a rabbi invited you to be a follower, that was a real honor. And you followed the rabbi around, you paid attention not just to what the rabbi said, but also what the rabbi did, their habits. If they gave you an instruction, you would act on it. And so Jesus had this life-on-life learning that was happening with his disciples, that rabbi-talmidim or rabbi-apprentice relationship. And then third, Jesus spoke with an honesty about the real struggles of our lives. Look at the Sermon on the Mount as an example. You get a couple verses in there, and Jesus says, if your brother or sister has something against you, and then gives an instruction. Is there anybody in the room besides me or listening who struggles in their extended family relationships? You got that brother-in-law or like some parent wounds, right? So Jesus is talking about this stuff. You get a few more verses in and Jesus says, do not worry about your life. Anybody besides me who struggles with worry and anxiousness? All right, so I made my point. He's talking about the real stuff of our lives. So thinking about this, wow, Jesus is rabbi. We're training to learn to experience life in the kingdom of God. How would this change how we do church? That was my question. And around that time, I was spending a lot of time with somebody that maybe a few of you have heard of, Dallas Willard, who is a USC professor of philosophy and also a spiritual teacher. We love our team in San Francisco. My friend Dieter, that we're common friends with, loved his book, The Divine Conspiracy, and he was willing to come up and spend time with us as we were starting our work. And I was frustrated because we had these great ideas, these really well articulated understandings of the kingdom of God and how spiritual formation works. But I'm like, where does it land? And so being sort of a young punk, I said, Dallas, how would a church or a community actually do this stuff? And in a deceptively simple way, he said, well, I think that a group of people should look at what Jesus said and did and then try to do those things together. And I'm thinking, duh. Like when I first picked up the Bible at 12 years old and I read those red letters and felt inspired by what Jesus said about life, I started trying to do those things. I was like, well, it seems like to follow the Jesus way, I should probably stop teasing my sisters. Well, if I want to follow the Jesus way, I should probably sit with that kid at lunch who doesn't smell so good and that other kids make fun of. Like Jesus would be a friend to that kid. And as I took those steps, I felt love flowing through me. I felt really alive. But he was part of the group, and on his list, he had 9 people he needed to reconcile with. And he was scared to do it, but they said, you're not alone in this. We're all taking this step this week. And so he came back the next week, and they went around and each shared what their experience was. And Rob said, I reconciled with all 9 people this week. I had 7 friends that I had these small things with, and I did those first because I knew that they'd easily forgive me. But then I contacted my ex-wife, and she gratefully agreed to meet with me. And I just, they'd worked on a script for how to do this. Please let me know how I failed to be a loving friend, partner, etc. in your life. And it took her about an hour and a half to give the answer. And he listened. Maybe the reason why they weren't married anymore is he'd never listened before, but he listened. And at the end, he said, I own up to those things. I'm so sorry for the pain that I caused in your life. On her way home, she texted him and said, Rob, you have set my heart free. Thank you. Then he contacted his mother, who'd he'd been estranged from for a couple of years. And a similar thing happened. So he comes to that meeting and says, this Jesus stuff really works. Like, my life is better now because of what we did this week. So a term I like to use for this dynamic is, I call it the Jesus dojo. I tried out Jesus gym, but it sounds like a guy's name. Who's Jim? And so, but basically the idea is, if we're going to be and make disciples in the same way that Jesus did, then how we are together is going to look more like a karate studio than a college lecture hall. It's going to be more interactive. We're going to be moving around and doing things. And we're going to have agreements to take on challenges together, to do the work together. So there's a lot of things in life that you can't learn just by having somebody tell you about them, right? Or read about it in the book. Many things you have to be up and moving around to learn. So you could have a dojo about cupcake making. You could have a dojo. You could have we know this when we go to a spin cycle class, or like I'm going to be taking sailing lessons in a few weeks, and I've read the book, but I know I won't really know how to tie those knots until I get there with the instructor and we start tying them and pulling on ropes. I think that learning to follow Jesus requires, because it's about real life, not just about esoteric ideas about God, because it's about real life in the kingdom. We have to be moving around and taking action together. So if you don't like the term Jesus Dojo, and forgive me if that's a bit of cultural appropriation, try on the term community of practice, right? So let me give you a bit more of a definition of what I think a Jesus Dojo or a community of practice is. First, it's an experiment. Insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting something different to happen. So if we're not happy with the level of transformation we're experiencing in our lives, then we need to try something new. I think experiment is a fun word for obedience. Like, play with it. Try some things out to see if it helps you learn to live in the way that Jesus invites us into. We're testing it out. And then when you do an experiment, you get some feedback. You can try it out and see what difference it makes. Here's a quick example. I'm in a group right now that this week we're exploring the way of lament, that theme from the Beatitudes, mourning and lament. And so we talked a bit about, when we met on Wednesday, about how we try and avoid pain and facing hard things. And we tend to numb out. So we, in a small group, we talked about the things that we normally go to as our escapes or numbing things. And I had to talk about me doom scrolling on what's on social media and the news when I wake up in the middle of the night or when I wake up in the morning. I don't quite feel like facing the day. Sometimes an hour can go by, and it robs me of the time to be with God, or I already feel like I'm behind in the day when I do that, but I'm avoiding, right? Another guy in the group said, for me, it's Mario Kart. And I'm afraid to say how many hours a day in all the in-between moments I'm playing this stupid game. And so together, our group said, let's limit or abstain from something this week that we normally go to so that we can make more space to encounter God's presence and go for a 15-minute walk at some point in the day instead, or sit to be with God. So we're like 4 days in now. Day 3, one of the guys texts me and he says, okay, it's day 3 without Mario Kart. Life is so different for me. It was way easier to give up than I thought. But also I just feel much more clear-headed, and I feel like I could hear better from the Holy Spirit now because of it. So I'm going to keep going. Now, this was something that when we talked about it, this friend said, I've read lots of articles on digital detox and how toxic this is for my brain and how the dopamine hit is, hurting me and everything. And I've known for a really long time I should maybe not spend this much time on Mario Kart. But the support of the group gave him what he needed to say yes to that thing that he wanted to do. Feel me? Okay, so it's an experiment. Second, inspired by the life and teachings of Jesus. So this is not random. We're wanting to pay careful attention to the Gospels and what Jesus said is the life that's possible for us. How did he do it? How could we be like him in those ways? And one thing I just want to point out is, I think earlier in my life, I thought I could just grunt out trying to do the things that Jesus did. But in order to do, and so we talk about like being radical or being hardcore and forcing ourselves to do those things. Jesus could do what he did because he had an accurate understanding of who God was, who he is, and how life works. So there was internal things going on that allowed him to freely live in that radical and loving way. And so we need to, for us to be formed in his way, we have to deal with the inside as well as the outside. So inspired by Jesus, in which a group of people take on risks and practices. I've found that it's real easy to kind of dream about what we could do, but where the power is in committing to actually doing the practice or trying it out. And so in groups that I lead, I call it the buy-in or the opt-in, where I say, I'm trying to invite you into this, but you have to say you want it and commit to it. And so we try and create high commitment environments. And that's something I'd encourage you all to do as the practice as well. And I'm going to give you a chance to do it by the end of this talk, is to opt in on something, because it locks in that important thing of we're doing it together. Take on practices. Here's a fourth aspect. In conversation with real needs in our lives and in the world around us. I think it's important that we don't take on practices randomly. Practices are a means to helping us experience a flourishing life and joining with what God is doing in the world. So it's good to have a space where we can be authentic about what are the struggles. Why is it hard for us to live the way that Jesus lived? Where are those pain points? Where's the distorted thinking and the scripts and the wounds that I keep telling myself that keep me from being able to do those things? And then important questions about what are we about collectively? Why are we damaging the planet? Why are there such strong divides? What creates the racial injustice that a lot of us have become newly reawakened to over the last couple of years? And how might our discipleship be related to these aches that we see not just in us, but in the world around us? And then finally, after we've taken a risk to experiment together, reflect on how those experiences can shape the ongoing rhythms of our lives. So, my friend and his Mario Kart thing, he's learning that life can be better when he limits this thing, right? And what I hope happens by the end of the week is that he goes, now I have a new benchmark. I've learned that life can be better than I was experiencing it. And I think I might make this part of my ongoing rhythm of life because it's been so helpful to me, right? So basically, we try some things, but it's very important that we reflect on them. Just trying things alone, like according to adult learning theory, we have to try something and then reflect on what we notice the change happening. And then that gives us a chance to say, do I want to keep doing this practice? Do I want to make it more of my habit? So what I've seen as the results of some of this is that we feel closer to each other when we're taking on shared practices. I do these 5 or 10 week groups, and a lot of people at the end of the 5 or 10 weeks say, man, I feel so close to you people. Like, how did that happen? And well, we got in a group, we were really honest with each other, and we took some risks with our lives, and we shared our stories about those experiences. Of course, we're going to feel close. And some people have even said to me, that 5 or 10 week experience, I felt closer than I felt with people that I've been in community groups with for years, because it was much more intentional and like more like a recovery group than that kind of playing nice sort of thing. We feel closer to each other. A second thing is we can take steps we hadn't been able to take on our own. And a third thing is we have a living story to tell. Not just about when we woke up to God's reality, accepted Christ years ago, but about the ongoing work that Christ is doing in our lives now. All right, you can tell I'm trying to say a lot in a short amount of time. So I'm going to try and move towards a little more detail about what spiritual formation is. A couple of snapshots. Formation is learning to be like Christ. Jesus really thought that we could be like him. And he said at the end of the Sermon on the Mount, anyone who hears these words of mine and puts them into practice is wise. So what does it mean to live like Christ? It is a gradual but intentional process of learning to live from a more accurate understanding of who God is, who we are, and how life works. I think you could interchange the word kingdom of God with reality. Jesus is saying reality is this. He knows how life works and how life works best. So if we could learn to see life as he sees it, we'd be able to live like Jesus lived as well, have that same experience. A couple of misconceptions about formation. One is that it's all up to God or it's all up to me, right? Many people be like, man, I don't like where I'm at, so let's just pray that God changes me. And that's not accurate to the dignity of your humanity. Paul wrote to the Philippians and he said, continue to work out your salvation with fear and trembling, because it's God who works in you to will and to act according to God's good purposes. So we're not at it alone. God is right here with us, but we have to join in the work that God wants to do to renovate our lives. I think another myth or misconception is that taking on practice is about earning some kind of merit, feeling like you're a star student or something like that. And And I don't think that's a helpful way to see taking on practices. The way I see it is I'm responding to the invitation of the life that I was created for. I'm not earning anything. And that it's a grace to be able to learn to live in these life-giving ways. Another I think, myth is that spiritual formation is only about religious or spiritual disciplines, or rituals. It's only about what we do when we're gathered like this, and it has to do with the Bible and some ancient prayers and some songs. Your whole life is part of your spiritual formation. How you take care of your body, what you eat, your sleep patterns, your habits around work and around how you talk to the people you live with, all of it matters. What you do with the packaging that comes into your house, right? All of it matters, and all of it's part of your spiritual formation. So learning to recognize this is key. Then one last one I'll mention as a myth is, I can do it alone. And hopefully, as you've heard me talk today, you know I'm suggesting it's not likely that you're going to be able to do it alone. We need a community of support. We need to be in the gym with others to do these things. Okay, so what if we get in the dojo together for a few minutes? How's that sound? Not just talk about it, do it. So I'll start by naming an ache that I have, and you can see if you identify with this. Theoretically, I know that Creator loves me, that Creator is here, and that I'm not alone, right? But I wake up a lot of days anxious about what I have to do and the things I need to get done. I stress a bit about what people are thinking about me. And so even before I get out of bed, I'm sort of defeated by the kind of of the details of my life, the list that I have to get done. Can anybody identify with any of these feelings I'm experiencing? Okay, so again, in my head, that's not what I believe, but in my experience, I live in a way of disconnection from Creator's presence. And so what is the life that's possible? I think the life that's possible is that God knows and empathizes with my current situation and wants me to be aware of and guided by divine presence. So is there a practice that could help me take this from just an idea to my lived experience of the with God life? And a technique that has helped many people with this and that I've really benefited from is called listening prayer or Emmanuel journaling. I understand you took a step in this direction as a group last week where you practiced interactive gratitude. And we're going to keep going with that, and I'm going to explain a couple other parts of Emmanuel journaling, and then we're going to do it together. That's okay. So you already know this part, so I'm not going to say much about it, but it's the step one is to give thanks. And if you want to follow along, you have a sheet about this that in front of you there. Write from God's, first write what you're currently grateful for. And then I'm going to move quickly through this because you did this already. And then what's God's response to what you're grateful for? So I did this morning. I said, Almighty Creator, right now, I'm grateful for a peaceful night's sleep and lots of really interesting dreams. I'm grateful for the delicious, rich sips of fresh roasted Kenyan peaberry coffee that I'm sipping. I'm grateful for that once familiar and now rare excitement of traveling. And then I write God's response to me. Mark, it delights me that you appreciate the rich gifts I bring to you each day. I want you to cherish and hold on to these experiences as evidence of my love for you. Okay, step 2 is to learn to be aware of God seeing you. So write from God's perspective what God sees about you right now, including your location and physical sensations. Here's what I wrote this morning as my response to that. And as you are probably noticing, now the journaling goes from me talking to actually me letting God examine me. So this is an operationalization of Psalm 139. Lord, you've searched me, you know me. So I said, I wrote, Mark, I'm here and I can see you propped up on the pillows in that hotel bed. Your back and shoulders are still sore from that fall you took while running earlier this week. Your throat feels dry and you have a slight headache from the shock of being in the Midwest cold. All right? Next step is right from God's perspective what God notices about your thoughts, feelings, and concerns. So I wrote, Mark, I know and am deeply interested in your thoughts, feelings, and concerns. I know that you're anxious about what you have committed to do this week, and you wonder if you have the stamina to do it all. You've got those ongoing health problems that are zapping your energy. And sometimes you feel like an imposter who is unworthy of the opportunities you have. Next step, right from God's perspective, how God empathizes with your current situation. Mark, I know all of this is big for you. This concern taps into your deepest insecurities and inherited messages about being cautious, living small, and never making mistakes. And then next, step 5, what does God want to remind you of or tell you to help you in your current circumstances? And I wrote, Mark, I am glad to be with you and treat your weakness tenderly. I can do something about what you're going through. You often expect more from yourself than I expect from you. I know your humanity. I want you to live courageously and playfully, discovering the riches of life in my kingdom. Don't be so afraid about making mistakes. Live and love boldly. Remember that I'm here cheering you on, and I can give you the energy and wisdom to show up fully to your life today. Okay, do you notice some of those dynamics there? It's like there's actually some good neurological research behind this prayer practice, because what we're trying to do is develop earned attachment to the Trinity, right? There's a truth about God's presence to your life, but we have distorted ideas about this. And so this is a practice that will help us internalize and remember again exactly how God is here present to us and walking with us in what we face today. So I'm going to invite you. I see some people have already been writing, but we're going to give you a few minutes to actually take the time to do your own Emmanuel journaling, to go through all those steps. And I'll call you back together in about, let's say 5 minutes or so. And then to complete the cycle on this, it's important that that you actually read it out loud. It's going to hit you differently when you read it out loud to another person. It's going to register it access a different part of your brain to help you internalize this even more. So let's put some music on, and we'll give it about 5 minutes for just you and God to have this interactive time following this pattern. I see maybe a few people still writing, but I want to honor our time. So would you be game to try sharing what you've written so far with another person in this room? I know this is going to be a little bit of a risk. So here's, I said a little bit about why, but it's because it registers differently when you say it out loud. But the other purpose of this is that you kind of want to check to make sure that how you're listening for God's voice has some harmony with how God has revealed God's self in Scripture. Like if I said in my Emmanuel journal, Mark, you're awesome, and I want you to have millions of dollars and to be really famous. Would that, is that harmonizing with Scripture, or is that just Mark being hopeful? Do you get what I'm saying? Or egotistical, right? And so having somebody else listening with you can help kind of confirm it. And so you might, as you're listening to the other person, you might be like, you can confirm some things. Or it could be that you're like, hey, sister, it sounds like you're still being you're still being harder on yourself than God would be with you in the way you're thinking God talks to you. Is that the God as revealed in Jesus that is really speaking to you there? But it's just a little bit of check on that. So what I'm going to invite you to do is just to get our bodies activated, stand up and partner with one other person, and move to a place where you can hear that person, and each take turns listening to what their experience was with Emmanuel journaling. This should take about 3 or 4 minutes, and then I'll call you back together. All right, go for it. And I'm happy to be somebody's partner. So I understand it's kind of unfair to pull you away from a conversation that could go on for a while longer, but maybe after we're done today, you'll want to talk more with that person about what you were hearing and noticing in your Emmanuel journal. This practice points us to the reality and possibility of true intimacy, connection, and attachment to the creator of the universe that we were made for. And that kind of attachment and intimacy is made possible because of the life and the loving sacrifice of Jesus. And so it's appropriate that at this point we turn towards the table, and our sister's going to lead us in this.
The Lord be with you. Lift up your hearts. Let us give thanks to the Lord our God. It is right to give our thanks and praise. We praise you and we bless you, holy and gracious God, source of life abundant. From before time, you made ready the creation. Your spirit moved over the deep and brought all things into being: sun, moon, and stars, earth, winds, and water, and every living thing. You made us in your image and taught us to walk in your ways. But we rebelled against you and wandered far away. And yet, as a mother cares for her children, you would not forget us. Time and again, you called us to live in the fullness of your love. And so, this day, we join with saints and angels in the chorus of praise that rings through eternity, lifting our voices to magnify you as we sing.
Holy, 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 Lord God Almighty. Early in the morning our song shall rise to thee. Holy, 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 merciful and mighty, God in three persons, blessed Trinity.
On the night before he died for us, Jesus was at table with his friends. He took bread, gave thanks to you, broke it, and gave it to them, saying, "Take, eat. This is my body, which is given for you. Do this for the remembrance of me." As supper was ending, Jesus took the cup of wine. Again, he gave thanks to you, gave it to them, and said, "Drink this, all of you. This is my blood of the new covenant, which is poured out for you and for all for the forgiveness of sins. Whenever you drink it, do this for the remembrance of me." Great is the mystery of faith. Christ has died. Christ is risen. Christ will come again. Now, gathered at our table, O God of all creation, and remembering Christ, crucified and risen, who was and is to come, we offer to you our gifts of bread and wine and ourselves, a living sacrifice. Pour out your Spirit upon these gifts that they may be the body and blood of Christ. Breathe your Spirit over the whole earth and make us your new creation, the body of Christ given for the world you have made. In the fullness of time, bring us with all your saints from every tribe and language and people and nation to feast at the banquet prepared from the foundation of the world. Through Christ, and with Christ, and in Christ, in the unity of the Holy Spirit, to you be honor, glory, and praise forever and ever. Amen. The gifts of God for the people of God. If you are at home, this would be a time for you to take the elements. And if you don't have that, there is a prayer for spiritual communion that you can read. If you're here in this space, the service, if you would come up to help us serve. I have gluten-free here at the table if someone needs that. And when you come to be served, please put your hands out and tell the servers your name so that they can serve you by name and you can receive the communion. There's no shadow you won't light up, mountain you won't climb up, coming after me. There's no wall you won't kick down, lie you won't tear down, coming after me. Would you stand and sing that with us? There's no shadow you won't light up, mountain you won't climb up, coming after me.
There's no wall you won't kick down, lie you won't tear down, coming after me. There's no shadow you won't light up, mountain you won't climb up, coming after me. There's no wall you won't kick down, lie you won't tear down, coming after me. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. Oh, it chases me down, fights till I'm found, leaves the 99, and I couldn't earn it, and I don't deserve it. Still you give yourself away. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. So praise God from whom all blessings flow. Praise Him, all creatures here below. Praise Him above, ye heavenly hosts. Praise Father, Son, and Holy Ghost. Amen. Amen.
You can have a seat. Well, friends, as you know, here at the practice, we like to say that Sunday is not the main event, that our actual lives are the main event. And so much of what we have talked about this morning is about that exact thing, is that we don't want Sunday morning to be the end, but this is the beginning. This is the beginning of this invitation, this adventure. And so with that, I'm going to invite Mark back up to extend our invitation for this week.
All right. Do you want to get into the Jesus Dojo with me this week? I want to work on my attachment to the Trinity, and I wondered if you would want to do that too. And the way we could do that is by trying Emmanuel journaling, let's say 2 to 4 times this week, and see if it makes a difference in how your days go. And so this is an opt-in, and the way that you could opt in, there's 2 ways if you want to get in the dojo with us on this. One is we've got a Facebook group that we've set up that's at the bottom of the sheet here. I just joined it. Jason started it, and we want you in with us. And just become join the page, join the group, and I'll post a few instructions a little later on today. And maybe you can just say, "Hey, I'm glad to be here." And then at some point this week, post one of your Emmanuel journal entries for the rest of us to kind of respond to. Hey, good job. Oh, it sounds like you're getting some good insight. And then at the end of the week, I'll post a question like, how did you go? What did you notice as a result of this? I'll post it next Saturday. If you're not on Facebook, congratulations. But you can still participate, and that's by emailing Rihanna R. Godfrey at thepracticechurch.org, and wow, and she'll get the group of you who are the non-Facebook people in a reply all group to kind of check in with each other on that.
Yeah. Thanks, Mark. We've done this a few times in the past with the Facebook group, and I can I think the first time we did it was an experiment that Mark guided us in. Gosh, that was probably like 6 or 7 years ago, and there are still people in our community, I remember first connecting with them because of that group, and it's been so meaningful. And because it's not just about, oh yeah, we're connected on Facebook, but it's about having these conversations about what we are experiencing. So would love for you to join, whether you're on Facebook and joining us, or emailing Rihanna and being a part of that group. We will make sure that in tomorrow's email, we will have everything that you need. Both the link is on the sheet, but we'll also include that in the email as well as Rihanna's email, so that you can join either way. Now, we have one really important thing to do in our gathering today. So we have been talking for a while. Actually, I probably shouldn't tell any of the story because that's probably what Ted's going to do. So in this moment, I'm going to invite Ted and Nicole to come up. Are you coming up too, Nicole? Yeah, so Ted and Nicole, I'm going to invite you up. And I'm going to invite our new Practice Church Council to come forward as well. So if Kathy and Mary and David and Jeff and Emily can come forward.
Thank you. We have a council. Woo! That has been official this week, and so today we just wanted to take some time to commission them, to pray for them. I was thinking about, there's so many things that I could say about them, but I woke up this morning, a friend had reminded me, I think it was Pope Francis that said that shepherds should smell like the sheep from being with the sheep, and I really get that sense from all of these people that they are not afraid to be with the sheep. They're not here to serve a ministry or an organization or to build an institution, but to serve Christ and to serve you, people. That just really stands out to me, and I think especially I think we've all are limping maybe a little bit from leadership, experiences that we've had in the past in other churches, and I just really, I find it a very, very comforting and healing thing to be able to place my trust in these leaders. So I'm just praising God for his work in all of this, and I think the best way that we can support them moving forward is to pray for them and to support them, because they are going to smell like some sheep because they are wading into some messes. There's a lot to figure out. So I just think we can really support them in unity, pray for discernment, pray for strength, and just that they will be hearing from the Holy Spirit as they move forward. Thank you for everything that you guys have done to contribute to this process as well.
Oh, this talk of smell makes me nervous. First, I'm Ted. I've had the privilege to be the chair of the Transitional Council, and I'm rolling off now and handing off to these folks. And I wanted to invite you, Mark was talking about doing experiments. I want to invite you into a corporate experiment of blessing for these 5 folks. And it's going to involve you using your bodies and your voices. So I'm going to teach you a very short blessing that we're going to say over each of these fine folks individually. Here's how it goes. Name, that was where it starts. May God fill you with light and power so there's no room for darkness at all. Let's practice that once together. May God fill you with light and power so there's no room for darkness at all. Okay, that's the voice part. You did very well. All smell aside. Now I'm going to ask you to stand. And if this wasn't COVID time, we would all come around these people and we would put our hands on them. And I'm going to suggest that you get as close to them as you're comfortable, but no closer, but also no farther. So if you want to take a step towards them, that's fine. And then because we won't put our hands on them, because that would be a terrible thing to do, I want to ask you to put your hands out and imagine that you're touching them. And when we bless, we are actually taking the blessing of God from him through us to them. That's the transaction. So I'll lead us. We're going to start with Kathy. Kathy, may God fill you with light and power so there's no room for any darkness at all. Amen. And now we're going to go to Emily. Emily, may God fill you with light and power so there's no room for darkness at all. And now Mary. Mary, may God fill you with light and power so there's no room for darkness at all. You're welcome. And Jeff, may God fill you with light and power so there's no room for darkness at all. And David, may God fill you with light and power so there's no room for darkness at all. Thank you all. I'm going to read one last thing over this group. A couple of years ago, I heard Richard Foster in an interview, and he did, you can sit down, I'm sorry. He said these words, and it was an interview, and I had to play it back like 10 times to write it down on this little tattered 3x5 card that I carry with me ever since. So friends, go forward in the power of the Lord, walking in the light, being confident the Spirit of God is with you, leading you, teaching you, loving you. Do not be afraid. Amen.
Thank you, Ted and Nicole and council. We are really excited for this new council that our whole community was a part of bringing about. So just a couple final things just to share with you before we are done. Next week, we will be back here again, continuing this series, and we're going to be looking at community. I feel like it dovetails so well into so much of what Mark was talking about as we continue to talk about why is community an essential part of what we do, both as a church and, in the church as a whole as well. And then one last thing to share with you. One of our community, Emily, who is one of our new council members as well, has organized some times for us as a community to come together and just spend time in community walking in nature. And I know that sounds crazy when it's cold outside right now, but have you ever gone for a walk in the woods when there's snow on the ground? There's something incredibly wonderful and peaceful about that. And so next Saturday, we're inviting you to go for a walk as a community. So anyone who is able, 10 a.m. next Saturday, we'll share a link in the email tomorrow for more information on the specific place. It's in Buffalo Grove. Is that in Buffalo Grove? I can't remember the address. You wouldn't remember it if I told you. So we'll put the information in an email. But one thing that we would love is we would love for you to register just so that we know who is coming. So if for some reason, like there's a massive snowstorm or it's going to be like bitterly, bitterly cold and it's really not safe for us to be out, we want to be able to let you know if we need to change the plans or in any way. But we would love to see you come together. It would be such a gift just for us as a community to walk together. And so with that, I'm going to invite you to please rise for our benediction.
Emily, I'm glad you're leading the hike. Last time I was in this area, Jason took me for a hike, and we ended up getting lost, and I got a lot of mosquito bites. So he'll be there, but you'll show us the way. So may you learn to live in the reality of Emmanuel. God is with you and God is for you. You are not alone. And God is walking with you in all of the thoughts and concerns and feelings of your life each day this week. Amen.